Imagine a world where the fundamental force tethering us to the Earth suddenly, inexplicably, ceased to exist. No warning, no sound, just the sudden, terrifying realization that everything you knew about reality had just been ripped away. The clock is ticking. Listen closely. Can you hear the silence? That oppressive, deep quiet just before the upward spiral begins. That is the sound of absolute fear. What if that invisible tether, the very force anchoring our existence, simply evaporated? What happens next is a chronicle of fear, mystery, and unimaginable chaos. It began like any other morning. The smell of coffee, the sound of the morning news, the routine that kept the world turning. But on this day, the turning stopped. First, it was subtle. A dropped pen that didn't fall. A misplaced coffee cup hovering inches above the counter. Small, insignificant objects defying the laws of physics. Disbelief quickly gave way to confusion. Then, as the larger objects began to lift, a primal, overwhelming wave of panic swept across the globe. No one knew where up ended. The chaos was immediate and absolute. Cars drifted from highways. Debris from buildings began its slow, inevitable ascent. The ground was no longer safe. People, caught unaware, began to float upward, their screams swallowed by the vast, open air. The skies became a terrifying, silent ocean of despair. Imagine the sheer, gut-wrenching terror of being untethered, a fragile human body, adrift in an unforgiving void, knowing that a simple push means eternal drift. Those who survived the initial catastrophe quickly learned the new, brutal rules of existence. Survival hinged on being tied down, permanently. Makeshift tethers, ropes, and chains became the most precious commodity. Every step was a calculation, every movement a risk. We were all prisoners of the remaining weight of the Earth. The fear of floating away was constant, but the isolation was worse. Entire communities, separated by the impossibility of movement. It broke minds before it broke bodies. While the world floated, the remaining scientists, tethered inside reinforced bunkers, raced against time to understand the impossible. What force could undo gravity itself? Their data was bewildering. Strange, localized energy readings pulsed from deep space, suggesting not an absence, but an active counterforce. Global networks were repurposed for one task: tracking the anomaly. Every nation, every resource, focused on the faint, mysterious signal that silenced the Earth's most fundamental law. The Earth had become alien to its inhabitants. New, horrifying landscapes emerged, dominated by floating continents of urban debris and the silent bodies of the lost. High above, the stratosphere was choked with the remnants of civilization, planes, skyscrapers, and everything not tied down, drifting eternally into the void. Food, water, shelter, basic needs became life-threatening endeavors. Every mundane task now required meticulous planning and constant awareness of the void beneath. The tracking data finally converged, pointing to a source far beyond Earth, a silent entity orchestrating our planetary nightmare. It was time for a final, desperate act. A small, heavily tethered team embarked on a high-risk mission, a slow, upward climb through the debris and the empty sky toward the epicenter of the anti-gravity pulse. And as they reached the source, the shocking truth was revealed. It wasn't a failure of gravity, but something far worse, a cosmic entity that needed our weight to survive. They severed the tether, and with a silent, overwhelming force, the world snapped back into place. Gravity returned, but the world would never be the same. The real horror isn't the fall, but what keeps you from floating away.